Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Mark Anthony's Music Picks. Today is episode 6 in the From the Booth series, where I interview various guests and people that I've met along the way on my musical journey. Today's special guest is Eric Lewis. Eric is a New Jersey native. He's a DJ, he's a producer, and he's also a clubber. He still goes out, even though I think he's around my age, which I really admire. But I've been talking to Eric for a while. We met by way of my channel. I've reviewed a couple of his records in my dub techno episodes, and this will be our first time meeting. So I hope you really enjoy listening to this conversation. Again, this is Eric Lewis. So Eric, thank you for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it, and it's nice to actually see your face. We've been chatting over Messenger for I don't know what at least a year now, maybe 2 years, but
Yeah, maybe about 2 years. So yeah, likewise, cool to be here. Cool channel. I
yeah,
dig the history angle of what you cover and a
yeah,
lot of the music,
yeah.
of course. So
Thank you. I basically thought it up maybe 2/3 of the way through a bottle of wine in 2020, and I
oh,
just
okay.
yeah, I just thought I wonder if I could review records and make that into a YouTube premise, and it actually worked out. So, but yeah,
Yeah, you've done good.
thank you.
Not easy.
No, it's not. It's not, man. I used to get so nervous for these videos. I don't think people can see it in the videos, but man, I used to get terribly nervous to do just to be on camera. You know what I mean? Like to get over
Yeah,
the shyness. So
and you're doing well, sans the cringe factor, the astonished face in the thumbnail and the big obnoxious do this like that stuff gets so tired after a while, especially when it comes to like the some of the different like production related tutorials that are out there. Like, oh my gosh. But anyway, that's just like
I
rampant. And
know.
I'm
Yeah,
a little tuned out of YouTube, to be honest, other than stuff that I really go to and enjoy. But yeah, the infotainment angle of it, I'm getting on a little rant here, I think is kind of like spoiled almost. I don't want to say it's totally bitter like that, but basically as a channel owner, there's so much interesting minutia you could talk about that has little real world practical value. That's apparent in the producer space like 100%.
mhm.
But yeah, so
Yeah, and to your point with the thumbnails with the stupid arrows on them and trying to like use tricky titles to get people to click things, it really is kind of trashing YouTube. And I specifically try to stay away from that because I don't want to go to like the lowest common denominator just to get people to click on my on my stuff. Like I'm okay if 200 people watch a video. That's fine with me. So,
yeah. So anyway,
yeah, yeah.
YouTube rant aside.
Yeah, yeah, rant aside. So, let's go back to I think it's interesting to go back to people's roots, maybe go back to your childhood, right? You're obviously like super enveloped in the music scene now. When you were where did music come into your life? What are some of your earliest music related memories?
Probably some, going back, I'm an 80s kid, so I was always a little jealous of like kids who were about 10 years older that they were, riding around doing their own thing on BMX bikes with mohawk haircuts and stuff. And there I was at 5, 7 years old, and not quite there yet to do those things. But I was like, man, that looks so freaking cool. But
Uh,
some cousins who were in that range of 8 to 10 years older than me would just play me stuff that they were into, from Def Leppard to Run DMC to stuff at the time. My one cousin, later on when I got into DJing, this is, years later, she was like, here's a stack of records I don't play anymore. And there were some gems in there, like, Frankie Knuckles, the Whistle Song and stuff like that I had no idea she was even into at the time. She was also big on Duran Duran, which I never got into that much. But that, I don't know, maybe planted the seed. They didn't really do a ton, but I just thought a lot of that music was cool. And then CDs came out, whatever. Um, and I was big. heavy metal guy, guitar player, band in high school, and then circa late '90s, the club thing was of more interest, and here we are.
Gotcha. Okay. So it sounds like your childhood was similar to mine with just kind of a hodgepodge of pop music. You weren't particularly married to any style or genre, is what I'm hearing at first, right?
Yeah, roughly. That's fair.
Okay. So, how did tell me about your first clubbing experiences, if you don't mind? Maybe like maybe the first ones that did resonated with you in some way, or that sort of functioned as the gatekeeper to get you in, I guess,
I
in.
mean, all of them were super memorable. I guess I'll say it like this. I'm old enough to have gone to a lot of the legendary Manhattan clubs, but too young enough to have gotten to them in their heyday. And you know what? There a generation ago had their big Manhattan clubs too, say, Red Zone and Palladium and the Jelly Bean, David Morales early days, Paradise Garage, etc. But there was a slew after that from the Peter Gation owned ones, the Limelight, well, Palladium Tunnel I went to, Limelight I went to. But yeah, by the late '90s, early 2000s, they were aging dinosaurs, if you will, past their prime. I wish I'd gone to vinyl more. I had a quick walkthrough one night or so, but I don't remember much because it was like happened so fast. I was new to it, and that was a dark room, and like it was just so much. Even though it was a dark room, there were still so many sensory things coming at you at once.
Mhm.
Um, so I did that. My wife would tease me because she's like, "Oh, you're a late bloomer." I was going to factory sneaking in high school. I was like, oh, wow. And I kind of heard like a schoolmate doing something at the time saying these, such and such goes to these parties in New York and they go on until like 10 a.m. on Sunday. And then like mine was blown. I couldn't wrap my head around that. But yeah, so then I think I went to a factory Friday like a couple times, maybe like twice. Like it was cool. I could tell it was a cool building, but nothing was really like mind blowing about it. Um, did tunnel once with some friends. That was all cool. Um, Another friend, grade school friend, was doing a couple of parties here and there in one of the back rooms at Limelight. This was around the years when that HR Geiger room was created up upstairs as a VIP room. Also, maybe like a little before, probably within a year or two of when Limelight closed and reopened as Avalon.
Okay.
So those were some of the early years, but really what stands out is like this is like real clubbing, if you will. I did a road trip to Montreal. I don't know if you ever been up there, but Montreal
No,
is a good time.
no, but go ahead.
So I did New Year's Eve 2002 in Montreal, and they have a pretty legendary after hour scene. Um, I want to say I had to look this up just to like sense check my memory because I remember we kind of did like a heavy stint where we went out every night, slept until 3 or 4 in the afternoon. By the time we got our asses up, fed, and out to the door again to go to dinner, circa breakfast, it was like nighttime. So it was like vampirism for like a 3 or 4 day stint there. I think what happened was New Year's Eve fell on a Monday night. So we did something like go up on Thursday and just raged and came home, New Year's Day or something late, or even maybe the day after that. I think we had a chill New Year's Day and maybe left the day after that. So anyway, definitely what stands out is it went to this club called Sona, which may or may, and they had a big run from like '96 to 2004. Like that was the premier after hour spot in Canada. I know you like Tribal. I don't have the CD jacket on me, but they actually, I remember looking up and like I had a mix CD that club did, kind of like, only a single disc, no DVD, but a mix CD from a club nonetheless, kind of like what Sound Factory had put out some roughly in the same time period. Had that sent to my house. All great, tribal tracks, whatever. But that was like real. after hours. I mean, it was the place where like the go-go dancers, because that's what Montreal is known for. They would go like industry people, right?
Mm.
Um, we'll go hang out after that. Saturday, I forget what we did. Sunday, we went back to Sona and just stayed way into the morning. And then, we did New Year's Eve at another good spot called Area. But that was like real clubbing and not kiddie stuff, if you will. Fast forward, later that month, I go to Sound Factory again, but this time it was for Jonathan's birthday party in 2002. So it was New Year's Eve turning 2002. And I had gone, like I said, I had been there a couple times, been in the building before on a Friday night. But then when I went on Saturdays, I was like, wow, went with a friend who had kind of done too much my age, but kind of over quotient on clubbing and was retired already for a little bit. So got him out of retirement at 22. He came with me. Something like I lost him at eight or nine in the morning, and then finally left around noon or 1 p.m. and made my way home solo and whatever. Had a good time on my own. Made some new friends and so forth. So those were some of the early memories, and that's when I kind of got it more, if you will. At the time, I was interested. I wasn't DJing yet. I was more interested in production, live PA. Had like a little modest trying to produce setup at home with the early days of computers and DAWs and stuff, and a lot of gear, little finished tracks at that point.
Okay.
But I knew my way around enough. Kind of the mixing and song structure elements weren't there yet.
Okay. You sort of touched on something, which is the time period of my clubbing was 99. Didn't really stumble into anything major until 2001, and people would say that that was actually like already the tail end. It had already peaked, right? So I'm going into these '01 and '02 parties thinking that they're the greatest thing ever, and then meanwhile 5 6 years before that was like the real actual peak for a lot of these clubs. And I remember sitting up in Penn Station, and somehow I was talking to this kid. We were going to Exit, and it was our second time, and we went once before that, and my mind was blown by it. And this kid was like, "Oh, Exit's a dying club." He's like, "You don't want to go there." And my buddy and I kind of like turned and like laughed, like, "This guy thinks this club's dying." He had a better perspective on the scene than I did. You know what I mean? Like, I was new, coming from like this small Philly scene where everything was kind of half-assed, going up to
Right.
New York and kind of having my mind blown. And then it just strikes me to think that in the late 90s, like, I don't know, 97 for example, that a lot of these venues were even more crazy and more of a rager than what I even bumped up against, which, like, I can't even fathom it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I had only stepped foot in the building a couple, like once or twice for Exit, and really, really cool space, but also a bit more uptown. And I think probably Junior has some good years there. I think I went to just go see what Junior was about. And another time I had a quick stint. It probably would have been dope, but I didn't stay long. There was a Tenaglia Halloween at Exit. I remember making an appearance for a little bit for, but I didn't stay super late and wasn't really big into dressing up and all the costumes and sweating in it and all that stuff. So I think I was a little bit in and out that night, unfortunately.
Yeah, gotcha. So you mentioned some of the big clubs and some big names so far. Did you have any superhero DJs that you were attached to at that point in your life, or was it sort of more about the venue and the experience, and you weren't really married to any like DJ or his mix
Yeah,
CDs?
and more of the latter. And then also in the back of my mind, I was kind of like, because I was trying to produce a bit, I was like, well, what's so special about DJs? They just play other people's music. But, seeing how that all came together at, Factory and whatnot started changing my perspective after a while. And, then I ended up spending a year at Jonathan Peters' Deeper Studios, like as an assistant for a bit. And, after the first month or so of just doing basic grunt work. Again, I could produce at the time. I wish I was a little more buttoned up. I probably would have had some, credits on records and stuff, but wasn't quite there yet in my skill set, but was there enough to like sound design some patches that they might use um, in some of the records and some of the synths and gear that they had. Um, but I would put together some edits JP would play like for fun in DJ tools that were like unofficial, creative things to play in the club, if you will. So that was kind of cool. Early days of Ableton One, and being able to put it together during the week and then see him play it and see a reaction on Saturday was pretty sweet.
Oh man. What Oh man, I have so many questions about like what it's like to be in the studio. I've hung out with friends that have released on different labels. I guess like kind of like B-list producers, but they're out there. They're on Discogs, and I'm just curious, like when you were in the deeper studios, was it just racks of like full blown high end equipment in all directions, or am I imagining it as being like more just over the top than it actually was?
No, I mean it was gorgeous. So I didn't know this until I, did some digging after, but it was designed by the late great Francis Manzella. So in terms of nerdy studio gear talk, I don't know how many DJs were hiring Fran. He went by for short. He's deceased, unfortunately.
Mhm.
Um, but he's a world renowned studio architect and whatnot. So if you search up and do some digging, you'll find the deeper studios as a page on his website in terms of like client list and stuff, right? So it's like super impressive. In terms of gear, it didn't have kind of the staples you'd be looking for in like a New York City studio to compete with like the big names at the time. So, it was probably missing a lot of the mic mics you would want to have for singer. Not that they didn't have like mics. Obviously, there were times when some of the famous people he remixed for actually went there to do some vocals. I don't know how all that worked. I wasn't privy to seeing some of that stuff. Um, but yeah, there was a time where I think he had tasked me with saying, "Hey, if you want to step up from intern like to staff, figure out a way to you know, turn the studio, create an income stream out of the studio," which maybe was a big ask for like a younger kid just getting into things. And I think also at that time, because I had a catch up with JP last about this time last year, he was saying like at that point, 2002, we're talking well into his factory residency after years of doing Saturday nights and years of churning out remixes and stuff and still getting that work. He was just like, I don't want to say um, not over it, of course, but like just his band. There's only so much bandwidth and only so many hours in a week, and when
Yeah,
Saturday nights run into well into Sundays, and then you got to sleep and recover through that. You know what I'm saying? Like that takes time out of the week too, right?
yeah, and I
Um,
mean, he's got. I mean, if you look at his remix discography, I mean, I'm just estimating there's probably 150. I think that's a safe bet.
yeah,
150, you know, Sound Factory vocal this, just
and that's just like a release. There were usually a couple interpretations on the release. There was like a Sound Factory mix, which was like the full on vocal, probably at least a dub, maybe another interpretation, and then maybe an instrumental. So you're talking like
right. Yeah,
one
yeah,
remix was actually like 4 tracks.
yeah. Different permutations. So Jim Hines, this just popped into my head, but I know Jim Hines was involved in a lot of those records. I guess did you get to spend time with Jim in the studio there?
No, not a super big amount of time. There was another fella named he goes by Richard Chester Bush, which you'll see on Discogs too. And I exchanged a couple quick messages. Super nice guy. I don't know what he does now. He's not active on Facebook. I hope he's well somewhere. I
Mhm.
definitely interacted with him a little bit more, and then of course, Tony Coluccio, who was the main dude who you see a lot more credits, and he was like a lot, doing a lot of the main work and stuff. Um, Jim, not as much. He wasn't as at least when I was there, he wasn't there as regularly um, as some of the other fellas. And
Okay.
then of course there was Edgar, the manager, and yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just imagining
It was
like
it was
just people
interesting.
in and out, like kind of just like in this looseness of just like, oh, this person's in the studio, and like I don't know, like somebody else that JP is possibly friends with, like Tenaglia just stops by, or Kevin Fisher or somebody else is just kind of like there one day.
No, the only time another famous person came through was the Rolling Stone photographer David LaChapelle, who cruised by one night. But I was just pretty much going there a couple days a week, and then whatever light work, maybe at factory in the club, and that was like more a little bit. Hey, kid, you get some comps as part of the deal, and your
Hmm.
train ticket into whatever assist and learn. But yeah, there was a short stint where JP was selling his own merch in the club that I guess Richard was a little cool with. I think on the third floor they had that gift shop for a little while, but somehow like there was this like little makeshift table that me and another kid went around with and sold a small merch line that he had for a little bit. That was a little bit short lived. Maybe that was my first actual sales job too. I don't remember. But yeah, I just chuckled because I was like barely went to factory at all, and then my first proper Saturday night wasn't until 2002, and then like 2 months later I'm going into his place kind of on the regular. And I just cold called. I had saw a business card. Some other friends who went out. I don't know why they never really went on Friday nights. So this was my friend at the time who was also DJing a bit at Limelight. They would go to Factory, but they went on Friday nights. I don't want to knock that Friday night scene entirely, but they also never went on Saturday, which is like I don't know why to this day. So anyway, one time I was at his house just hanging out, shooting the breeze, and he was like, "Yeah, we met someone from," and I don't know who it was, but they met, but they had this business card, and it was a cool business card at the time because it had a gorgeous print on the back of the studio of the A room, and then just business information in the cool colored font on the front that was just white and colored text, high gloss, whatever, look good. So I was like, all right, jotted down the number I'm gonna call, and I did, and that was that. Um, so yeah, and then I over the years I kept in touch here and there, just a couple hellos at shows and whatnot. But by '06, '07, '08, it was like I went out heavy like every weekend for a while. Fast forward a year or two, it became once a month for a bit, then it became once a quarter, and then the pace didn't stop entirely, fortunately, but wound down a lot.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, going out frequently like that when you were talking about your clubbing binge in Montreal. The first thing that comes to mind for me is like, how did your ears even survive that? Like physically, like how did your ears like not like degrade? Uh, and the
I mean,
reason I bring that up is because I did like a 3 night stretch where I went out twice in Philly and then went up to Exit. Like it was like a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday sequence that I did. And when I came back from that on Saturday, my ears were just like obviously like had taken some damage from that. So I'm just
mm,
curious. Like, did you ever run into that?
no, I don't think back then they played as loud as they do now. I really don't. Like I was at a wedding, and I'm a little nerdy about it. I've got a phone an app in the phone that has like a decibel meter. And you know what I did too? I play it smart. I probably should use ear. I don't go out a ton, and I'm not one to like put my head against the speaker. Like I remember back in those days, you would just see people lounging, sitting on the speaker stack. I'm like, yeah, that's a little loud. So I didn't wear earplugs, but I would do my best a little bit to kind of like prevent it. But yeah, there were times where I remember some ringing and whatnot. Um, and probably should have at the time. I don't notice any loss now. I never played a bunch of gigs where it was stupid loud.
Mhm.
Um, so nothing crazy on the hearing front, but I legit think that it's louder these days than in the past. For
Yeah.
no for no good reason either.
I agree with that, and louder's definitely not better. Louder in a lot of cases is worse. I would prefer to have a balanced sound. I thought the sound at Output, New York was really good. Did you go there? If
Yeah, I had some really good nights there. That's how I landed on Nervous because I met Kevin Williams, the longtime employee there. I don't know his exact role, but yeah, that's basically what led to my releases on Nervous because I bumped into Kevin the night of my bachelor party. We did a little steak dinner, followed by beer hall, followed by Output.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, I was sad to see that place go. I think I went 3 times. Saw Tenaglia, Digweed, Naveen G opened for Digweed there. That was a epic party. Got to see Danny Howells in the Panther Room.
Oh
But
wow!
yeah, I got a picture with Danny, and that like if you ever want to see me like the most starstruck I've ever been, I got this camera phone picture with Danny Howells before he went on, and I was like, I couldn't I couldn't contain myself. I was so happy to meet the guy. I was able to like sidle up to him next to him while he was waiting to go into the DJ booth, and he recognized me from my Discogs picture. So it was
Oh
like
wow!
a really cool interaction. Yeah,
That's
but yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah, thanks. You kind of segued into another topic I wanted to talk about, which is the productions that you did. Like I was looking through your catalog. It looks like you have at least 3 singles that you did for Nervous in the previous decade, right?
Mhm.
So you
Oh yeah, just real quick, back to Howells, and I know you like Yoshitoshi, but do you know the record Kinky Funk?
yes.
Okay, cool. I love that record. To me, it hasn't aged a day, and that was probably one of the first, somewhere in the first 20 records I ever bought. That I also found like a near mint copy for super cheap at like a local record store here in New Jersey as a score. So I love that one.
Oh,
But anyway,
okay.
just as an
There's two
aside.
two versions on it, right? So which one do you like?
For years it was the faster one, and then I think there's another one actually called Slow Mix that I like just as much.
Okay.
I'm probably gonna play that after we wrap up, but that's just such a good one.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and revisit that.
I
It's
don't think
somewhere
that
like
that record has aged, and then I know different vibe, of course, but John Chiffone Thunder, that record is just so interesting and different that that's still smacks today, you know?
yeah, yeah. I actually I love that record. It just has a dusty, dingy tinge to it that I can't think of anything that's even remotely similar to that. And
No.
it's even like out of place. It's out of place on the EP, backed with like a very gentle house track on the other
Yeah.
side, thinking about you. It's not that Chiafone doesn't go hard on other tracks, but just not like he doesn't. I don't know where he pulled it from, but it seems
Yeah, it's true.
like a moment of genius and a perfect Sound Factory Jonathan Peters record.
Yeah. So okay, so anyway, so you asked, so 3 releases on Nervous and some tech house stuff in the 2010s you were getting at.
Yeah, just I mean, as a somebody that tried to produce, I found it to be really overwhelming with choices and options. How did you even decide which genre you were gonna start producing in? You know what I mean? Like you could go house, deep house, techno.
Yeah, I
Let's start
have a
there in
hard
tech
time,
first.
so, like, even as a, guitar player in high school, I have a hard time learning by ear. I need the tab. Give me the notes or give me the tablature. Figuring out by ear and stuff, not really for me. But there's a lot of people who play that way. And there's also a lot of people in the electronic music world who are good like that, if you will. So like look
Mhm.
on YouTube, the people doing tutorials in the style of insert name of artist, they all have a good ear like that. I can't really, it's difficult for me to sit down and say I'm going to make an EP in the style of fill in the blank label I'd like to release on. It's more I make what I make, and maybe there's a home for it, and sometimes they land places, like even the releases on Nervous, one of them is much more techno and banging than the other two for sure.
The 2016 one, right?
Yeah,
Friction?
Friction.
Friction, right? Yeah, that's interesting.
And I try to make stuff that's not, flavor of the day, that's going to have some longevity. And even with vocals, I feel like the song with the big, vocals and this and that, like they often don't age well. Like I think the Creamer and K vocals that I think we both know and love, many of them, they're not full on big chorus and verse and this and that. It's more a little more than a hook, but super memorable and just enough.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? That's a little more my speed. But in terms of just making tracks and instrumental stuff, I don't really get into the sound of the day, because when that just becomes so prevalent, then that's when a whole sound becomes like cliche and tired and gets too cheesy and wears itself out.
Yeah, yeah,
Happened to Tribal House back in the day, like it just got everyone was doing the same whatever drummy stuff, and that was that.
yeah. I mean, I'm really deliberate when I buy Tribal. Like, let's take Stereo's back catalog, Chus and Ceballos. If you look through maybe the first 10 or 15 of those, there's some real gems in there that I think
Yeah,
are underappreciated. But even even if you have to be super discerning, I think, even as you get, especially as you get later into the catalog, because it's just like there's only so many permutations of these sounds and that rhythm that you can really do before it just gets like really beat up. And so sometimes I look at like modern genres that I see getting beat up, and I'm like, is this like really as rinsed out as it seems, or is this just like the same thing that happened in all of the other, like minimal beat itself to death, right? Tribal beat itself up, right? Like
I feel
business to
like there
go
was a
is like,
minimal there was like a minimal explosion that came in quick and died, say '06 to maybe just before EDM coming in and peaking, and went away a little bit. Because I was playing minimalist stuff kind of before a little hiatus I took from like 2008 to 2012 roughly.
Mhm.
um you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. And it wasn't as much as even I talk bad about it, or a lot of people do in hindsight. There was still a lot of fun stuff in that genre to me. So it
Yeah,
wasn't just like, I mean, you can take any, maybe you like talk smack on the '06 electro house, but even then there was still some gems in there. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
like I like the early Tool Room releases. um there was some good stuff there for sure.
Mark Knight and such.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I guess I'm off on a tangent there, but basically saying like it seems like any genre can beat itself up and kind of rinse itself. And I guess that's a good segue into another topic, which is what do you think about the state of, I guess we'll start with like with modern releases that are coming out on vinyl right now. Like what do you like? What do you not like? Do you think we're in a high point or a low point for music? If you try
I
to be
mean, I don't have as many records as you, because there's only so much time, money to go around, and when you produce and promote your releases and shit, there's budget for that you need, right? But I've been buying records for a bit. I feel like that's always where the good stuff has been in there, especially right now. There's just stuff that gets released on vinyl that's a little bit more, has a little bit more love. It's a little more interesting, different, niche, artisanal, whatever you want to call it.
Mhm,
Uh, I mean, there's people doing stuff purely on vinyl and it's legit vinyl only. Like I do that.
mhm,
I won't. So I mean, for me personally, I think that there's definitely some special buyers out there who are into vinyl, and that has a place. So what I do is I release a record vinyl only, and until it sells out physical, then I'll do something for Bandcamp, and then way later on, Beatport, and then way later on, all those, you know, folks who just stream or whatever, sure, it'll see the light of day on Spotify. I'm in favor of making stuff accessible and not being so snotty, like that's me. But at the same point, I totally realize that, people who are buying records are much more committed than some. I was gonna some effer who just does Spotify here and there. It's like, come on. I think part of what's ruined music a little bit is like the low attention spans that are just out there due to, scroll and find what you like. Spotify, thousands of millions of songs at your disposal on demand. It's like, the whole discovery, and like e-commerce has done a lot of good things to get a product to your door or a digital product available to you instantly, which is kind of cool. But the whole culture and community around discovery and whatnot is just, back in the day, it was like, oh, what are people buying? What are these other kids into? What's cool? How to find out what's like, what's cool and what's not, right? And then there's record store culture, which is just a really great example of that. You can go and dig, see who's playing what. Now what is it? A digital chart, a freaking unboxing video by some influencer on, we get some of the old school analog ways of doing things, but for younger people, they have no exposure to that, or maybe you just have your early DJ. Like I've given DJ lessons here and there, and it's like, my gosh, it's so much more straightforward to just teach on vinyl. But I get that's cost prohibitive and way expensive for a lot of people. But if cost wasn't an option, like it's just so much more straightforward on vinyl, and it forces you to have and start with a smaller collection. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah, it
I've had
enforces.
people come in, adults and young. Oh, I got a controller. Then they got their $1,000 plus MacBook, of course, which is the most important, most expensive piece of the puzzle. And granted, that can do some double duty and work in personal life. And then some little shit controller. That's it's cool. It packs so many features into it, but it's just so many distractions and stuff. And it's like, and then most of them sign up for some subscription where they have access to Beatport or SoundCloud and everything. It's just like, no, just start with like 20 songs tops.
So, Eric, when we left off, you were sort of alluding to the enforced scarcity that vinyl imposes upon those who use it, right? And how the people that are using different digital mediums can kind of fall victim to ADD, right?
Yeah, and just overload from so many songs to choose from, so many features that are provided with the whatever record box, Serato, Tractor, whatever your tool of choice is. You know what I mean? It's like if you remember when your parents get their first iPhone and they're like, you know what I mean? Like, what do I do? Like I started with the early ones, so yeah. Now iPhone, iOS, whatever it's on 16 is like so feature rich. Um,
Hmm.
Same thing with like an Ableton. All this stuff has gotten more and more feature rich over the years. That you know what I mean. The beginner controllers just pack so much already. It's like, what do I do? And then yeah.
Yeah, and from my standpoint, I mean, not much needs to be done. I guess I could be considered a lazy DJ relative to somebody like Jonathan Peters, but I try to put all my effort into programming, right? Like which track is gonna go next, and is it gonna make sense? Just like I try to like really stick to the basics, and I think some of that stuff can get lost on somebody that has a controller and they're like hitting a button to, I don't know, have a random like cowbell sample hit or something. It's just like, you know what I mean? Like they're trying to like add bells and whistles onto a track, and that's the producer's job, in my opinion, right? Like let the
Yeah, it can
producer sort of let out.
it can get overdone. I mean, I got a rotary mixer, so I have the master sounds at home, but
Oh,
the bit. I don't want to say the whatever the basic one that has no EQ. So
Uh-huh.
that like really forces the song selection issue, maybe in a way that I had never thought about programming before. So I think that's a good thing. Um, Later on, I got the effects to mess with effects over stuff too. So,
Mhm.
but
I
it was good for like my first couple years with that mixture to go so pure and so nothing with effects because probably a lot of people had that EFX 500 back in the day. That's the
yeah.
piece of gear I think I regret selling for the like 180 I got for it. I would still use that here and there.
Yeah.
That was fun. But yeah, I got that not long after I started DJing on vinyl, and always had. Then went laptop DJing for a little bit. Didn't really do much with CDs because I kind of saw the Ableton and laptop thing is much more powerful than what, and that was a little before laptops became all the rage, and then that's phased out a little bit. I kind of think laptop DJing is a little silly at this point, but
That's interesting. I mean, the guy that comes to mind, I remember seeing Guy Gerber in New York in 2014, and he was running off of a laptop, and it's like weird just seeing like the glow of the person's face like hunched in front of the laptop. You
I
know what
mean
I mean?
it can definitely be done well, but I think I'm more poking a little fun at like your run of the mill guy doing mobile events at like a birthday party and that stuff.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
that's where it just gets like a little silly. And look, some of those guys are really good. Like I don't mix shorter songs with vocals where there's less and less time to mix in and out, like a instrumental house track or techno track, if you will. So I can appreciate the skill. I don't want to sound like a total hater on the other side of DJing, but um, I was at a pool club in the summer, and for whatever reason, they had this guy come in to just play music, and he played way too loud, and like his laptop cost probably more than like his whole rig. I'm like, that's what's wrong with this whole picture. Like, couldn't blend, couldn't mix, just playing too loud, playing pop, freaking nonsense and stuff, and can't blend, and like has some little crap controller, but like a $1,500 MacBook, and it's like,
Yeah. Yeah, I notice. I mean, there's plenty of professional mixers in the scene, like people that can mix. I did start to notice maybe around 2015 when I was going out that there were more DJs that flat out couldn't mix, and I don't mean like they were off or like a little sloppy. It was like they didn't know the procedure for beat matching two records, so it's just kind of like fade out and fade in. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing because I was at like kind of high name underground parties, and it was just kind of weird to see the scene, kind of get diluted like that. Whereas like in, I don't know, pick your time period, '06, '07, '08, like you just never ran into that. It was like it seemed like the bar to get the gig was higher, and there was more snootiness, which was, there were plenty of people like talking shit on other DJs for not being able to mix, but um, yeah, it's just interesting to see, I guess, how, yeah, just, I don't know, like how, just the like the overall degrading of the average caliber over time, and I think some of the equipment has a lot to do with that, is where I was going with that.
yeah, I mean, those seeds were planted in the days of the at least in Manhattan when the bottle service thing got popular, and I think that was when it started going downhill. And then you also have the rise of festival culture, and I think it's hard for like a festival culture to coexist with a club culture in the same market because why do people want to come and play a smaller club gig if they're pays so much less in comparison to like over here Brooklyn
Mhm.
Mirage versus like what happened to Output, and yeah, part of it is neighborhood stuff and whatnot too, but I think it also gets difficult when you're a little whatever, a little dog, and then you've got this big monster of the Avant Gardner facility to compete with, kind of. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I'm thinking of my experience at Output. I saw Black Coffee play there in the outdoor part, and he sounded so perfect that I don't know if he was like syncing or if it was almost like too good to be true. I mean, that's like another aspect of it. Like if you could take my best vinyl set that I've ever laid down, and it's gonna have little mistakes and blips in it and stuff. And it seems like the bar is so high, and that people are used to perfection to the point that it kind of I think it might lure DJs into maybe pre-recorded sequences. You know what I mean? Or like relying more heavily on like safety nets and automation and such. Like, is that a fair take on what you're seeing out there as well?
I don't know. I mean, maybe. I don't really I don't care so much if someone uses sync here and there. Whatever. If you have to do that to get by in a
Mhm.
pinch, it's hard to say. Yeah, I mean, I just think generally, it's a little antiquated that electronic music is supposed to be so forward thinking and this and that, but the way that things are booked are so like old school and in-person handshake and
Mhm.
whatever, you know what I mean? So that I think needs a little freshening up. I think there's a lot of people who get booked for familiarity and just showing up and whatever, and that almost trumps mixing skill, producing and things like that. But so
Yeah, maybe that's going back to what I was saying about some of the DJs that literally don't know the procedure for mixing. That might be how they got in there, right? Just knowing the right person, showing up every weekend to the parties and such, and then they get an invite. That could be,
yeah,
but
I think there's a place for that, to throw a bone to some loyalists and stuff and whatever. Um,
mhm.
but I feel like that's the majority of situations and who's booked and this and that. But anyway, the promoting world is another one for me that I don't have time or patience to figure out. There's records to make, tunes to make, you know, and
I
get
don't
booked
blame
and
you.
whatnot.
I don't blame you. I would never want to be a promoter. No, that's you're just in the middle of the maximum shade doing that. I just wouldn't I wouldn't want any part of it. So,
Oddly, people make a really nice go out of it. I
yeah.
don't know. I follow some people closely enough to see that they've been in it for a while. Their kids go to private school and stuff.
Okay.
Maybe that's a little bit by necessity. I don't know.
Yeah,
Like
okay.
if you watch Mike Nervous and stuff, he'll post his kids and stuff. They're like college age, roughly, and I
Mhm.
think they go to private school. So,
Okay.
just
All
saying.
right. Yeah, so yeah. Yeah, I guess if they can hack it and if they have a system that works, good for them. One of the so we were talking about music being diluted, and the other day I was looking across my record shelf and I have a dub techno section, and one of the things that stands out to me is how many one-offs there are in the dub techno space. Like you were talking about eccentric releases only on vinyl. It seems like dub techno is like the haven for that, and it makes that genre like pretty high up in my ranks and pretty special for me. Like, do you get the same sense from it? Like that it tends to draw in maybe somebody that does two releases ever and then is not heard from again, or
I don't know. Since I've been buying more vinyl as of late, particularly in the dubby and minimal space, I see a good bit of the same. I don't want to say the same names all the time, but a
Mhm.
lot of quality stuff from more familiar names. Not really as many one-offs. You're probably much more of a collector and into the details than me.
Yeah, it might just be the result of 15, 20 years of slowly amassing these little eccentric releases, but that is one of the things I love about it. That's also a good segue into your label, Devilish Affair. So you were doing the tech house and kind of darker releases on Nervous. How did you end up with the inspiration to launch Devilish?
It's just where I guess after buying some, because I don't want to say I produce squarely dub techno. It's definitely dub leaning, um, which is fine. There's sounds that I like. I don't really have interest in anything ambient. I know that's another part of dub techno that is somewhat popular. For me, I still favor stuff that's more DJ friendly, club track, if you will.
Hmm.
Um, Definitely appreciate some of your words. I know on the adventures too, you were saying that all four tracks are solid, and I think "knocked it out of the park" was a phrase you used. So take that as a compliment. Appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, I try to give people, like, I don't like when you buy a record and it almost sounds like instead of an EP, it's really four remixes almost of one track, but they all sound so super close.
Hmm.
Not not a huge fan of that. That's where I think you get into territory where two or three tracks are good and maybe one isn't so much, and then that's what almost makes me feel like, okay, is there a digital alternative available, and off I go to Bandcamp, truthfully. So, I try and give people a good overall package from, ideally, hopefully they like all four tracks, and then the artwork and the heavyweight disc, and um, not shortchanging and providing the paper sleeve and stuff. So it's an all around good package, and I'm coming in at like 10 or 11 euro, which I think is super fair.
Yeah, that's a good point. A solid four-track release. I mean, it's painful to buy a four-tracker where only one is good, and you're spending $16 on it.
Yeah,
it's
no, I'm out.
that's when out of all the times, that's where I'm like, maybe I should be maybe I should at least have one CDJ.
Oh, you have nothing of the sort?
No,
Oh man. Oh yeah.
no.
Well, I mean, a lot of people went to Denon for that reason, because you could get the one Denon media player that has the two outputs and play two tracks at the same time as needed.
Oh, okay,
I'm in that camp. I see there's a bunch of other rotary people who, the Denon is their player of choice, just for
okay.
just because of the value.
Yeah, I'll have to have you send me a link to it, so I can familiarize myself. And yeah, I wouldn't mind having just the ability to do it off to the side on my rig.
Yeah, you know what? You know what's nice too is it has the onboard beat analysis that'll get your beat grid, so you don't have to do all that prep in advance with your computer. So it's pretty non-techie friendly, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, dude, I don't even know what you're talking about with the beat grid. I don't even know what that is.
So the beat grid is like, that's really what enables sync.
Oh, okay.
Because you probably played on the old school CDJs where if you grabbed the perfect loop, it was like, the gods in the sky were in your camp that day. You
Hmm.
remember those days or
Yeah,
no?
yeah.
Yeah, super hard to grab a perfect loop. Now, you don't even have to be that close, and it'll do it perfectly for you if your beat grid is in check.
Okay.
So usually, what you'd have to do is take your files, analyze them in Rekordbox, and make sure that there is no drift of the grid, and if so, correct it. But yeah, you need that song analysis done. And for years, it's been you have to have your computer Pioneer Rekordbox to do that. But the Denons came out, and they do the onboard analysis for you.
Okay.
You
I
can even you can't, I don't know how to correct literal drift, which is more rare with digital releases, right? But like, let's say that the beat grid starts on the wrong beat, and you need to shift it all like a half beat or a whole beat. You could do that on the player itself, which to me I think is pretty cool.
gotcha. Gotcha. All right. So Devilish Affair has two records out. I have both tests thanks to you.
So
What's
number number
what
three
else is
just hit
coming? What's next?
scores. Number three is out.
Oh shoot, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, it kind of, you know what? I have blur.
Getting blurred into your background. Do you want to
Yeah,
explain
my
that?
bad there. I have the thing on blur with the backgrounds. So it's called the Rolling Hills EP, and it's not just all me this time. I It's one of my tunes with three different remixers. Most of them are pretty known in the space. I got TM Shuffle from Vu Records. I love his stuff, right? Do you buy his stuff?
No, but I know the name.
Okay, yeah, he's a favorite of mine. And then Ohm, and then Dan Goul out of Australia, who's made some appearances on Mixcult and Berg Audio, and also this Pinewood label with on vinyl. He's got some nice releases too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I'll hit you up with a press. I have some extras still.
Okay. And
The
any
I'm
other
gonna try.
releases in your pipeline?
What's that?
Any other releases in your pipeline?
A bunch of digital. You know, I wish there was time and money to to do vinyl all the time. Can you see this,
Because
or is it real blurry?
yeah, it's doing the blur.
Yeah, sorry about that. So the pressing plant surprised me, and they did five special splatter copies of the latest record, I guess just for shits and giggles, or
Uh-huh.
maybe it's a creative way to upsell me into doing some splatter, which is probably going to work. But you know, when they asked me how many final copies of the latest I wanted, I said, give me 15. And then also, if you have any of Adventures 2 around, give me those. So I see this big box on my front doorstep. I'm like, oh, I don't even want to know what that cost to ship over. But it was fine. It was reasonable. And in it, it goes, you know, here's DA002, five specials. Five. I'm like, what is this specials business about? I was super busy. I think it got up to my doorstep on a Tuesday. I didn't open it up till like a Friday. And then I'm looking, I'm like, oh, wow, they did some splatter copies for me. So there's only five that exist of each the new 003 and five of the 002. And like they picked the colors, the splatter that like matched kind of the same color tones, colorways of the artwork. So to me, it looks super cool. I have to figure out. Definitely, there's going to be some that go on my wall in my house in like a nice vinyl case, which I haven't found the right one to buy because I feel like they're on Amazon, but then a couple people are like, no, this is really a piece of garbage. I don't know. Maybe I have to go to a frame shop and have it done there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's cool. So yeah, so the 003 vinyl release is out now. And then I'll have some digitals in the pipeline for sure. I think I sent like 14 songs out for mastering in the past 2 weeks.
Oh wow.
So there'll be digital stuff
Okay.
planned for a bit in the queue. Then there's some other bootlegs that are not really dubby at all that are going to get a little promo push. Some stuff I did for Jonathan this time last year that had a little life in his streaming show for his streaming only people. But I want to give him a push to the larger world and see what other kind of DJ support I get just to see what happens. So
Okay. And those are up on the Bandcamp. That was the Bandcamp code that you gave me. Do you
sorry.
want
So
to give that
band
a shout out?
Yeah, so the Devilish Affair Bandcamp page, use code MARK25 for 25% off your order. That does not apply to my personal Bandcamp page, which is a different URL. So though it's Devilish Affair releases only, 25% off your order. MARK25 for 25% off your order. I'll just have that expire like end of year. And you could drop the code in the comments. So a little special something for you and your listeners, followers.
Thank you, Eric. I'll include that down in the description for anybody that's listening and is interested. So you can go and check out Eric's releases there.
Maybe they're all like Discog peaks people who only buy vinyls. Maybe it's not of interest to them. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Probably a decent
I've
mix.
seen comments here and there that when you've done my reviews, a couple people in the States or whatever have grabbed copies and commented and stuff. So
Oh, very good.
yeah,
Very
so
good.
that's cool.
Yeah, and like you said, it's just like fun dub oriented club music. I think you're straddling a nice line there where it's somewhere between it's like literal dub techno. Right?
Okay, I'll take it.
Right, like techno fused with dub elements and uh y- it seems like you're very far away from the cliches which I appreciate. So,
Nice,
prop,
man.
props on the label and for launching it successfully.
Yeah, it's been cool. Vinyl's definitely a special format, if you will, and people who like it, it gets their attention. No one gets promos in the mail so much anymore. So like when people get it, it's a nice business card too, is how you look at it these days. Like when I was talking with Jonathan Peters about this last year, he almost when I said the numbers on vinyl and whatever, it's just such a different ballgame than like what he was used to in the '90s. So I'm telling him this, and he's looking at me like I have two heads a little bit, like it's crazy. But they used to do runs of thousands at a clip, and that's where the money was. But now the money's more in gigging, and the music is more of an add-on, small moneymaker or a little loss leader, branding thing, street cred for the love, passion project. That's much more where it's at
Yeah,
present.
it is street cred in my opinion. For somebody like me, I mean, I am vinyl only. I Whether or not that's a reasonable stance to take, I guess that's debatable. But the producers that I know are the ones that are releasing on vinyl, and I know that for people like yourself, you can end up taking a loss on something if if they don't all sell or if something goes wrong in the production. I don't know how all the contracts work, but it's a risk, and I know you're putting up a lot of money up front in a lot of cases just to have this thing out there. But when the smoke clears, that might be the only remaining artifact from your career. You know what I mean? Like the only actual like physical tangible piece of it might be that vinyl.
I mean, that might be the only physical, tangible piece of me, or piece of me. Flash forward, you know, 60, 70 years.
Yep, that's
It could
it.
outlive me for real.
Yep. Yep.
Someone passes it down to their whatever somewhere out there. I mean, it's pretty cool. Like my stuff, you find, obviously, you don't know every customer that buys it because it's blinds. People are buying it off Dex, Juno, whatever, smaller little retail shops. I always get sad when stores close. This little store in Australia called Something Else Music by Dave. Um, Something Else Records, rather. The guy who runs it is Dave Stewart. I've only run across him recently. I mean, he's halfway around the world, but yeah, he supported my first two releases, but unfortunately, he's closing his store just after so many years.
Hmm.
The cost, the rent, the hassle of it, and whatnot. But yeah, I don't know who all the people are, but every now and then I'll see, oh, there's my stuff turned up on YouTube somewhere, and like, this guy had four decks and was playing like this baller setup in Eastern Europe someplace, and these
And one of
other
your
guys.
records was in the mix.
Yeah, he played like he had an hour-long set, but played like three tracks of the First Adventures EP off of it. Even digital stuff pops up here and there too. Like I did a digital track with a vocalist called "Waiting in the Rain" that John Digweed took a liking to,
Hmm.
and I was just googling myself and song names and ran across an inclusion in what is it, 1,001 track lists. I was like, oh shit, he included it in at his series on Apple, compiled and mixed. That's like a mix show, but just on Apple Music, right? So I'm like, okay, that's cool. Fast forward a month, about this time last year, I see my Spotify stats blowing up a little bit. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm in these playlists of Digweed in Argentina. So I'm like, let me go Google, Digweed plus Rosario, where they did this show at. And sure enough, some promoter gal down there had about a half hour bootleg footage that she posted to YouTube, and ID'd some of the songs. I'm like, that's wild that like this. tune that I made up here in New Jersey is just going off in this big, because he has a big connection with Argentina, in
Mm-hmm.
this big party at this big known venue in Argentina. I'm like, that's cool. But then I was also like, well, I didn't see any money out of that, so that kind of sucks.
Yeah, yeah, but your
It
tune got
makes
out
me think of
there.
that meme, like, you see the guy at the party and he's like off in the corner, and then the two people dancing or something like that, and it's like, well, they don't even know that I can DJ with vinyl, and it just makes me think like, they don't even know that I made this song that like Digweed's playing or whatever.
Yeah. Oh man, that's got to be cool though, man. Money or no money, that's got to be cool. Seeing your so basically somebody's at a party taking camera phone footage, your song's in there, and somebody posts the ID in the YouTube video.
Yeah, well, yeah, and even after a while, the algorithms will pick up IDs of stuff that's out there and copyrighted. But I think she
Yeah.
ID'd it with a chapter or so, so that made it a little easier for me to find it searching YouTube. So that was cool. It was a pretty high, pretty solid video capture too. Like,
Hmm.
you could hear Digweed doing some effects over the breakdown, and then um the song drops, and then everything is blue, and this smoke comes down from the it's cool, like, and it's like this ocean of people.
Yeah, yeah. If you don't mind, I'll include that in the description of the video. Maybe send me the link to it. I'll scroll it to the right time parameter in the video, and then I'll put the link down below this video so people can go watch it. I would love to watch it. So,
Yeah, yeah, I'll send you that as a follow-up. Got my homework to do.
all right. Well, thank you very much for your time today, Eric. It was great getting to see you and get to know you a little bit better. Like I said, we've been chatting for over a year now, maybe 2 years. So it's nice to actually really connect like this. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, cool, man. Maybe there will be a follow-up, but great to chat with your people, and we'll be looking forward for your next bit of vinyl reviews and whatnot. But yeah, man, thanks again, and catch you later.
Yeah, no problem, Eric. Take care.
See ya.